All good.
Hello, everyone. Today, I want to welcome Candace Moss, who has an amazing healing story. She's somebody who has suffered from all sorts of chronic symptoms pretty much her whole life, it sounds like, and especially even the last 20 years or so. She's been searching for how to get better. She's had a range of conditions from chronic PTSD, mold toxicity, chronic fatigue, SIBO, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, anxiety, food intolerance, cognitive issues, food addictions, arthritis, chronic pain, light and sound sensitivity. The list goes on. That is a lot to be dealing with for many, many years. And what I love about your story is that you're an example of no matter how long you have been suffering and struggling, you can turn it around, and you've done that. So first of all, tell the audience how you handled having condition and symptom after symptom piling up over all of those years. How did you handle that?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, just happy to be here. And how did I handle that? I would say I feel like I was just treading water, for like years, 10, 15 years. I had small children, and when it first started, when the symptoms really hit, I was a military spouse, so my partner was overseas and I was alone. So there was just a lot of like barely getting by, and a lot of like going to get stuff done, and then just crashing for hours or days or weeks, months. um and I think I handled it at first by trying. At first I tried a lot of nutritional stuff. I thought maybe I could just change it all nutritionally, and then I saw doctors, and then I just kind of gave up on getting better for a while and just tried pushing through. And then at some point it got so bad that I feared that I wouldn't be around for my kids. Like it was going slowly downhill. So I just made a lot of changes in my life.
Wow. I remember that feeling when it felt like it was just getting darker and darker. And had these two little kids, they needed full-time care, and some survival instinct that just took over. And it's like, I have to find the way out. And fortunately, I think having that motivation can really help keep our function higher than it would have been maybe without it. I know you probably had to just keep getting up and doing the dishes and doing the things. What were some of the hardest symptoms that you had to deal with while being a mom? What was that? For those that are listening that are a mother suffering, help them to feel maybe like you understand what was hard for you.
Okay. I think the hardest thing was the fatigue and the brain fog. I mean, I remember I would get up. Oh, I didn't sleep that well, but I would get up and I would start the day, and I would like get breakfast, and as soon as the very basics were done, or right around like maybe 10 a.m., my eyes were so heavy they would just close. And I loved being a mom. It wasn't something it was something I wanted to do, but I just couldn't. So my eyes would close. I'd have to like lie down on the sofa, and I would sort of like try to get things for them to do. I mean, they were little, like 1 and 4. But I would be so tired that I just wouldn't be able to do anything. And when my partner was around, I mean, he was just confused and I was confused. And so that was like emotionally, and like in a partnership and a relationship, that was incredibly challenging. And just like wanting to do so many things, I might cry, and not being able to. And so yeah, and then also another big challenge for me was like the food sensitivities, just like not being able to eat anything. I mean, it just got to the point. And so having to shop and prepare, meals for myself as well as my family, and having to explain to people when we would go places, trying to be like, it's no big deal. I can find something to eat anywhere we go. That was my default line, which was true. I could always eat a little something, but it was a huge challenge. And that's been one of the most exhilarating, like fun parts of recovery, is getting to eat things. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot this existed. I literally went like 15 years without eating a lot of stuff.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's amazing. And I am so sorry that you had to go through that with your kids for so long. And I know that this story, again, a lot of people are like, oh, sure, you can heal if you've only been sick a year or two, right? Like, but I've been sick for a decade or more. And we are so neuroplastic. Our digestive system, our body, our brain, you can get it all back.
It's amazing. It's like it's just back there in the background waiting the whole time. It's like, yep, I do know how to do this. Like, whenever I get a chance, your body's saying like, I will go back and do the things that I'm supposed to, even if I've never done it in my whole life, because we have like generations, we have millennia of evolution, that's programmed in, it's ready to go. So like even one lifetime can't really knock it out. Yeah. Which I think is amazing.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've knocked out a lot. And what I'm sure people are going to want to know, what started to help you? What started to heal first? Give us a little more insight as to what got better and why.
You mean like after starting Primal Trust, or just?
Yeah. Well, is that what started to shift things for you?
So I had a little bit of a journey getting here. I would say I had been really, really sick for 12 years. And that's when it was like going down, down, down. And I connected with this women's group, and I started taking these classes and going to New York City and like doing all of these really fun things, even though I was still sick. Like I ended up in the hospital once in New York, like in the emergency room.
Was it Regina's classes?
Yes.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was like, I don't know if I ever knew that women could live like that, be so alive and in their body and with each other. And so I started doing that, and that sort of like it shifted a lot of things for me. It brought me back into my body, and it brought me into my joy and pleasure and worthiness. Like, oh yeah, I do deserve to live. I do deserve to have an amazing life. And I think that's what helped me make the decisions. So after that, when that happened, I realized, okay, I do want to live. And so I actually took a retreat, and I went to Costa Rica for 5 weeks. And I was just like, okay. And I didn't watch TV. I didn't do anything extra. I was like focused on my healing. I don't think that was necessarily, but after so many years, it was a really good reset for me. And
I assume your kids were older at this point.
Yeah, they were like 15, 16, and 13. So that was finally possible. I mean, until then, I don't think I had taken until I started going to New York, I hadn't taken one weekend for myself probably in, 10 or 12, 14 years. Don't recommend waiting that long. So I did some like emotional work in Costa Rica, and just got clear, on my motivation and what I needed to do to take care of myself. And it just got really clear for me, like, if I don't take care of myself first, nothing else matters. Like, I can't even talk about the other things because I might not be here. Mm-hmm. So, and then after that, I did see a practitioner. So I can't remember what year, but at some point I saw my functional medicine doctor, and she recommended she gave me, I mean, she did all the tests like I asked her to. She gave me all the supplements. We talked about all the therapies. And I was doing some of those. But she said, I think, well, two things she had said. I think you have mold. I think you've had mold exposure. She actually told me that way before. And I was like, whatever, I can't deal with that. But this time she told me, there's this thing called brain retraining. And I'm going to give you all of these other things, but this will actually probably be the most helpful. And I was like, right, okay. I just like shoved it away. And I kept doing all the things. I did supplements, and I can't even remember all the therapies I had tried, all the alternative therapies. None of them ever really helped much. They would give me temporary relief from certain symptoms, and then either those symptoms would come back or new symptoms would pop up. But when I started, I remember like the week that I started brain retraining. This was another program that I started with. And within like 2 days, I was noticing a difference. It was the first time in 18 years that I hadn't needed a nap or 2 naps or 3 naps in a day. I was like, what is going on? And then that just kind of kept building. And so from there, I had a slightly bumpy road. But I kept doing that practice, just the basic brain retraining. It was like rounds, every day. And I just kept getting better and better. It's a very rocky road up the hill. So like things would get better and be like, yeah. And I would try to do more things, do things too quickly, and then crash. But like not crash all the way back down, maybe, and then climb back up. Yeah. So Primal Trust came after that. I hit a plateau after a while of just the brain retraining. And I just felt kind of stuck there for maybe like 6 or 9 months. And then I found out about Primal Trust, and it felt like it was more comprehensive, and also just really well. Like I liked the community aspect, and I liked the framework of the teaching. So I wanted to like listen to classes and have all of the pieces sort of taught to me again in one place. So that really helped. And then, yeah, I could go on and on about all the parts that have helped.
That's awesome. What did you start noticing with Primal Trust that was different as far as your symptoms falling away? Like give the listeners here an understanding. What was different from brain retraining alone? What symptoms started to shift by adding in the vagus nerve, the somatics, the trauma work, plus the brain retraining?
Okay. Gosh, the vagus nerve stuff has been enormous. And I would say it's like, I'm trying to put my finger on what changed when adding that in. But it's almost like, it's hard to explain, but I felt like I had more access to more of myself. So, and almost like it was just more casual, like the vagus nerve stuff and the orienting has been huge for me. And it's just like, it's like I've regained this very simple, very fundamental feeling of being okay. And it's like, it's not fancy, and it's not like I can go out and conquer the world necessarily. It's just like, oh, okay, this feels really good. And being able to access that a lot more frequently without doing a full round of brain retraining. I love like the vagal toning stuff and the orienting. It's so quick and easy. And also just like feeling, physically feeling like in my neck and my head and like different parts of where the vagus nerve is, I guess. I just feel like so much more relaxed there that in 15, 20 years had been like iron rods.
Wow. That's amazing. And it's so, yeah, it's the work is pretty simple. And you'd think, well, how could this possibly change like mold exposure, lifelong PTSD? But what people don't realize is that everything we feel is run by our autonomic nervous system. And if you can plug into that autonomic nervous system and switch a few switches there by simple tools, can be a radical
Yeah.
turnaround.
And so like, as you're saying that with the mold and stuff, like I've actually noticed since starting Primal Trust. So when I was doing the previous, just the brain retraining, I would have really good days. But if I had mold exposure, I was a goner for like a week still. And now with all of these other more subtle, like fundamental tools, I've had mold exposures on and off for the past 2 years as I've been doing Primal Trust. And it's just getting like less and less and less and less of an issue, which is amazing.
Did you hear
Really
that,
amazing.
everybody? It gets to be less and less and less of an issue, meaning you don't have to have strict avoidance your whole life. And that's exactly what we see. It's exactly what we see when the brain and the nervous system are in a coherent state. Our capacity to not only interpret triggers differently is improved, but the ability to move the toxins out of our body is improved.
Yeah. And I was talking to a friend who was talking about taking all these binders and like, and I realized I haven't done those protocols in so long, in years, but I feel better than I ever did when I was doing, and those things were really hard on me. Like they would knock me out for days and weeks. And now I'm like, oh my God, I think my body's just doing the detoxing for me. I don't need a fancy protocol. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to take all the pills. I mean, it must be because I'm still having exposures on a regular basis. I have a family member who has mold in their house, and I've chosen to like keep, I had to limit it for a while, but now it's like it's less and less of an issue. And yeah, it's just incredibly liberating.
And how is your like chronic fatigue? Is that better? And the anxiety and you said your food capacity is better, your light sound sensitivity. Where are you at with all of those symptoms?
Yeah. Okay. So, I used to not be able to drive on a sunny day because the sun would burn my eyes. I would literally get like a sunburn on my eyes. Sometimes you could see it. Even if I was wearing sunglasses, that even made it worse sometimes. Or like being out on a boat or something, like anywhere in the sun reflective, it was really not good. So now I can drive anytime. And sometimes I think about it, I'm like, oh, should I drive today? I'm like, yeah, you can actually drive today. The sound stuff, um, well, that's like not the most dramatic one, but oh my gosh, smells. I used to get so sick. Walking by an apartment building that had a dryer vent going, or into the supermarket. Sometimes I intentionally walk down the laundry detergent aisle now just out of curiosity. I'm like, and I feel fine. I mean, I feel fine. Let's see, what were the anxiety? The anxiety has been like, I feel like that's been one of that's one of the things that still has held on, and I have little spikes of it, but it's way more manageable. I actually had really bad depression. I don't know if I mentioned that, but like when all of this was happening, like, even near, not actually suicidal, but like a lot of thoughts around that for a couple of years here and there. And then after that, just still depressed, but not so bad. I don't even remember the last time I was depressed. Let's see. Oh, the food stuff. Okay, the fatigue. This, when you first said, how about the fatigue? I'm like, this still blows my mind that I do not take naps anymore. I mean, you ask anyone who knew me, I was the nap queen and the bath queen. I still love baths, but I used to take them because I couldn't function. It was the only thing I could do besides sleep. So I would take a bath. And so it's just amazing having like a whole day to do what I want. I even have a part-time job now that I started a year ago, and so I have been working, I have an online business that I've been running in like small doses, even while I was sick a lot of the time. But I got a part-time job to be out in the world and to see if I could stand on my feet, for 4 or 5 hours and interact with people and work at a register, and be able to handle it cognitively, like all these different things at once in a new environment. And it was really challenging at first. I got a little ahead of myself and I tried to do too much. But then I talked to my managers and we brought it back down to like 1 shift a week, and they were fine with that. So I've been doing that for a year. And at first I did need to nap or rest after, but now I can go do a whole shift and I leave feeling fine. It's
That's
amazing.
amazing. I love that. You've had so many different symptom turnarounds. And I think it's just so spectacular to show the proof of our own innate intelligence. It wasn't like you ended up doing a ton of protocols to get better. You really did focus on the nervous system rebalancing. You mentioned something that you do that I think would be really cool for you to share with listeners, because I know for me, it was also a big piece of my healing. And I know that you're a somatic, sensual movement practitioner. Can you tell people what that is, what the benefits are, who it might be for, and how it can help them?
Yeah. Can I just share a story of like
Yeah.
how I got into that and how I
Yeah.
discovered that it
Yeah.
was impactful? So when I started doing these classes in New York, I would go for 1 weekend a month for like 3 months at a time. And this was really deep, really intense personal growth work. There would be hundreds or thousands of women there in the same room. It was a lot. And we were like moving a lot of energy, looking at, deep emotions, but also things that had happened in our lives, things that we wanted in our lives. And at the end of the weekend, I would be like, oh, there was so much. I'd be pretty overwhelmed, overloaded. My system was like maxed out. And then I would go and take this sensual movement class on Sunday evening after the weekend. And so I would arrive at the sensual movement class. I barely got myself there, and I, kind of just collapse on the floor. But after an hour and a half of really slow, gentle, it wasn't always slow and gentle. It would start off slow and gentle, but this movement practice, it welcomed in all of our emotions. And it was very personal. Like you could just do whatever you wanted to do. If I wanted to like, be up against a wall under my blanket, just moving by myself, that was fine. Or if I wanted to move big and get things out, that was fine too. But I noticed that at the end of those classes, I did not feel overwhelmed. I felt really alive in my body. And when I would walk out of the studio onto the streets of New York, I felt like a new person. Mm-hmm. I was like, I sometimes I would have my backpack on and I was walking with all these people in the city, and I almost felt like I was gliding, but I was really grounded. And it blew my mind because 2 hours earlier, I was nearly a puddle on the floor. And I thought, oh, I've done too much. I can't do anymore. But then I would move in ways that were true for me. And all of a sudden it was all integrated. And I watched a lot of other women go through the same process, these same weekends in New York, doing all the work, all the emotional work, all of the like really intense stuff, but they weren't taking time to move their bodies and pay attention to how their body wanted to move. And so they weren't, for a lot of people, it wasn't integrating as much. And I noticed they would have these great weekends, but then they would go home and their lives would go snap back to exactly the way they were before. And for me, I would go home and all of a sudden my life would be changing. And it wasn't even because I was trying to, it was because I had already integrated it and I was just starting to live in a new way. So that's when I started putting the pieces together, and I was like, I need to continue some practice of moving my body and staying tuned into what my body needs, and also having fun. Like it wasn't movement that was like, okay, now we do this, now we do this, now we do this. It was like, ooh, what do I feel like doing right now? What would just be so easy? And it was magical. So I kept doing it, and then I started teaching it.
Wow. I love it. And for those that are listening, I just want to echo that I think somatic sensual movement is one of the most powerful practices. It was for me as well. I share about it a little bit from time to time. One of the resources I love to point people to are 5 Rhythms dancing. What about for you, for people who are listening and they're like, where can I learn? What would you say to them?
Yeah, 5 Rhythms is great. I love ecstatic dance.
Mhm.
Can go do those in most cities. It's like an open sometimes like a 2-hour event. You just move however you want. There's usually a DJ that plays great music. Um, I developed Body Bliss, which is my practice, and now I share it with people because it's especially gentle on the nervous system. So there's just like a lot of awareness. I have been to a lot of dance events where I would just blow myself out because I was like so excited to move my body. And I wasn't really paying enough attention to my nervous system. So Body Bliss is like my gentle practice for that, that also incorporates fun and play. So yeah, those are some options.
Love it. And tell the listeners, they're hearing you say, okay, this dance piece was really great, but you still ended up needing to go through a nervous system program with brain retraining vagus nerve. Why do you think that is from your perspective? Why wasn't somatics enough for you?
Well, number one, I think just learning, like getting the intellectual understanding of why everything's happening and how it all fits together is super important, because you will have I did have spikes of, anxiety or fatigue or whatever, and knowing how all the nervous system worked was really helpful, and it's still helpful. I still remind myself, this is what's happening. You might be tempted to think it's this thing out there, but really what's happening is just a little glitch in the system. The other thing I would say is, well, the blowing things out, like going too fast, it's really easy with somatics. And I also have always loved like walking and working out in my own way, like very mild workouts, but it's tempting to push it too far too fast. And so I think with all the nervous system practices that you're teaching, the vagal toning, the orienting, the brain retraining, it's just a really good anchor, and like it's a good time to just pay attention and sort of see where your boundaries are, and listen to like what your system needs. And then the somatics are really good for integrating all of these new insights that you've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to describe that. And I think I'd like to have you end with giving your words of wisdom for anyone who might identify in a similar situation. You've been sick for many years. You've got mold, you've got digestive stuff, you've got anxiety, cognitive issues. What would be your word of wisdom for somebody who relates to you? If you could talk to yourself 20 years ago, what would you have said?
Gosh. I would say you're not crazy. Like, just because you're learning that all of this is stemming from like a root cause in your system that's actually malleable and trainable, that doesn't mean you've made up all this stuff. All of these things have been very real. And I would say to myself, and I would say to you, you have no idea what's possible. Like, when you're stuck in that place, you just can't imagine how good life can be. And you don't have to get there all at once. I think I would continually remind myself, like, if you just choose to go straight to the root and make small incremental changes there, that path will take you where you want to go. And don't worry about a timeline, because if it can get infinitely better, then even if it takes a long time, it's just going to be always getting better. I don't know if that makes sense, but those are some of the things I would say. And I also want to just kind of circle back, you said something about like digestive stuff, and I don't think I've talked about it here, but that was so enormous for me. I mean, I have had pain where I couldn't stand up because my belly was so bloated and so painful. I've gone for 30 days at a time without pooping. More than once. Like, stuff was wrong.
I love that you just shared that for the entire world. That's a sign of a true, yeah, you've come a long way.
Yeah, someday I think I will. I've always thought of like just putting out my list of the things that I went through and how, intense they were somewhere. So I don't want to think about it on a regular basis, but if I were me, I would want to know that someone else had been through all this stuff and made it through.
I love it. We just had an interview with Marla Hall, and she said her doctors were going to take out 80% of her colon for colon inertia. Same thing, just not moving. And she is completely healed from doing vagus nerve and autonomic nervous system. So, there's another one for those that are listening. It's all regulated by your nervous system.
Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I love
Can
this.
I say one other thing?
Yes, please do.
I have been so incredibly impressed and just like delighted by the new Regulate program that you put together. So I joined Primal Trust, I think about a year before that came out. And I was really enjoying all the videos and learning. I was feeling a little scattered still. I mean, I was scattered, and the program was still being put together, I think. But this new Regulate that started whenever it started, I've taken a lot of online programs. I've created a lot of some, and I have never seen a structure, like an outline and I guess what do you call it? Like a portal that's so comprehensive but well organized. And the information that you share in each video in Regulate and Level 2, but especially in Regulate, I mean, it is a lot of information. It's a lot of valuable information. And I feel like the way it's organized and the order in which you learn it is world class. Like, I mean, you cannot get this anywhere else, I don't think, in a way that's usable in your life. And then you have like all of the mentors and the community and the classes on top of that, the live gatherings, and it's just amazing. I recommend it to, pretty much anyone I meet who's struggling, even if they're not. Like, I don't think people need to be sick to learn this stuff and benefit from it. But if you are sick, oh my God, don't waste another minute.
Wow. Thank you. I really love hearing that feedback. I worked pretty hard on it, and I knew that people needed the science and the information, but in a way to like string it together. And I'm really grateful that you see that it's very applicable and practical. Um, so thank you for that compliment. I receive it. Thank you.
And I also love that you're welcome. And I also love that you continually remind people to take their time. That's the other thing I've seen a lot. Slowing down, taking time to digest it, really just like work with one tool and until it becomes kind of natural. And then we then weave in another one. That's been really helpful for me. And I love having the space to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's a good reminder for those listening. They often want to come in and binge watch the program. I'm like, you'll blow up your nervous system if you do that. Like these tools are potent. You've got
Mhm.
to integrate them piece by piece. And when you're in a hurry to heal, it often takes longer to heal. That's the irony.
Yep. So cute the way that works.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Candace. This was an interview full of lots of great information and just gems of wisdom. I really appreciate you meeting with me today.
Thank you so much.